Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about some of the highlights of the 165-page filing from Jack Smith that was unsealed yesterday. This is a really big development. Basically, the parties have been jockeying for well over a year, and the big gift from the Supreme Court in yanking the case from Judge Chutkan was to keep the evidence from seeing the light of day. We were thinking in the form of an actual trial. We won't have a trial, of course. We won't have a mini trial. But because the Supreme Court told the parties, or told Chutkan, who told the parties to address immunity, we have now this whole big brief from the United States that lays out so much of their evidence, way more than we've seen before, in chapter and verse, with cites, and really is a preview of the entire case, which that, of course, matters on its own. How they're going to prove it, how strong it is, though always an asterisk here, the whole thing goes away. If Trump wins, he'll just order it dismissed before it can be tried. But you've had some commentary and coverage of what seemed to be the big ticket items. Let me just say there are, well, number one, as I said on MSNBC, of all the bombshells, the biggest bombshell is that this was revealed. I'll do another tape on that, but we thought Trump would fight tooth and nail up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and instead, perhaps caught napping slightly, it was issued by Chutkan more or less simultaneous with her order rejecting Trump's arguments about redactions and accepting Jack Smith's. Beyond that, though, it's a fusillade, if I can use the SAT word, of explosive revelations. Many people have documented what they see as the biggest. I agree with most of those. And then there are a couple that I see that really, it seems to me, others haven't yet really cottoned on to. But let me just go over what really jumps out from this 165-page brief. Okay, first, there is a lot of stuff involving co-conspirators, and we can pretty much piece them together. We really already had, but in coming days, you'll see hardworking commentators really identify, yep, P5, that's Chesbro for sure. Yep, that's Eastman. Yep, that's Giuliani, etc. And they're not named because the DOJ wanted to redact the names of witnesses who are not named in the indictment. So like Mike Pence's name is not redacted. He is named in the indictment. But some of them do things in front of Trump that are really damning and just explosive. Maybe the big quote that you've heard again and again is "Make 'em riot." This is not said by Trump, but it's said by one of his co-conspirators. Somebody refers to a previous riot that occurred down in Florida, and this could happen, and the co-conspirator says, "Make 'em riot." But Trump has, more important than these statements by co-conspirators, though it's a conspiracy, so things said in front of Trump and by others, that all comes in, but things out of Trump's own mouth are the most important. And the January 6th committee in Congress didn't get a lot of that. People interposed claims of executive privilege, or they didn't get the right people to testify. So that stuff now, which is in there, is really dynamite for any case. And a big thing to know, under the federal rules of evidence, any statement by Trump, even as reported by a third person so that it would normally be hearsay, is not hearsay and is admissible. Cassidy Hutchinson says Trump said thus and so. Normally, that would be hearsay, but under the federal rules of evidence, it's not. So all the statements of Trump are going to come in. Okay, so a very big one. Trump is told that Pence is in is potential trouble. He is being led away, has to be evacuated, and Trump responds, "So what?" So his vice president is in really serious danger. Trump, has put him there. His response, so what? That's going to stun a jury. And those are from the words of Trump himself. Also, by the way, we learn, as we hadn't, that when all this is going on, Trump is sealed up in his dining room watching Fox News, and some of his tweets, some of the worst tweets, like Pence lacked the courage to do what was necessary, are done there, and he is alone. We wouldn't have been able to get that, but we're going to have at trial, and we have here forensic experts who are able to get at the actual statements, and then combined with witness testimony that says, no, he was all alone there. We have really all kinds of evidence of knowledge that everything is false that they're saying. We have evidence that they simply make up statistics. We have evidence that Trump, is told again and again by friends and White House officials, there's no fraud here. Bill Barr, we knew that already. And so, what is he going to say? He did all this conduct. He might say, well, I didn't know, and I thought it was okay, and I genuinely believe there could be fraud. I just wanted to look into it. We've got really strong evidence that makes that impossible. We've got evidence of his being present. There's a whole big section about the various false electors. And in Pennsylvania, there's an important call that he calls into. So we have him actually present when this is happening. We have a lot of evidence involving Steve Bannon. We have some evidence who is just a complete, miscreant. He is really involved in saying screw Trump's official lawyers who say that he can't do anything. We have evidence of Trump. This is really, I think, strong circumstantial evidence. There are certain meetings where he tells, and we only found this out because there wasn't testimony of this by Pat Cipollone, White House counsel, who claimed executive privilege, but he had to yield in the grand jury. And there were meetings, important meetings with the wacky team crazy, like John Eastman, that Trump directed Cipollone to leave. Trump directs Cipollone to leave in order to hear Eastman's cockamamie theories. So that's really very strong evidence that he knows it's cockamamie. He knows it's false. Certainly, it's strong evidence that he can't use any kind of advice of counsel defense, because for that defense, you can't just handpick your lawyers and get the crazy evidence that you want. We've got a very big role for Rudy Giuliani, a kind of jocular exchange where they say they'll pay him only if he wins. And Hirschman, the White House counsel official, who, among other things, tells Eastman they better get good criminal defense lawyers, jokes back, well, we're never going to have to pay him. Jason Miller, everybody telling him he has no real case. And then there's this that nobody has noticed so far on page 75 of the Jack Smith's brief, which I think is among the most vicious things I've heard. When the defendant took the stage at the Ellipse rally to speak to the supporters who had gathered there at his urging, he knew that Pence had refused once and for all to use the defendant's fraudulent electors' certificates. So he riles up the crowd and pretends that Pence hasn't made a final decision, but says if Pence does the right thing, we'll be okay. And knowing Pence has already decided not to, and that when that becomes clear to this crowd, who he's left with a vestige of hope that Pence will, they're going to go berserk, exactly as they do, and start to cry for hanging Mike Pence and really just blowing the whole thing up. So I think that detail, that he knows it and he's still manipulating the crowd, I think is a very strong new detail that's in the long brief. Okay, so that's the main thing that people are focusing on, is all the evidence. Let me just add one thing, because this is about About 2/3 of it is the evidence, but the rest is the argument why the whole case should be able to proceed under the Supreme Court's immunity standards. And definitely the tough one, where the battle's going to be joined, where it's really going to go up to the D.C. Circuit and possibly U.S. Supreme Court, is over Pence. Because the Supreme Court says in its opinion, sure seems like it's an official act, and he's talking at the White House to his vice president, which, seems very much sort of executive branch stuff. But the argument starting at page 90 of the special counsel brief is, for all these conversations, since the subject matter is Pence basically breaking the law and the constitutional command in counting the certificates, that function is something that Pence, does not as vice president, second in command to Trump, but as president pro tem of the Senate, as he in fact did. So all of that, they're saying, it rebuts any presumption of official act because it doesn't undermine the functions and authority and need for confidentiality of the executive branch. You can see the other side of the argument pretty quickly, as I'm sure can the pro-Trump justices on the Supreme Court, which is, he's eventually going to work and do this in the Senate, but right now Trump is talking to him in a confidential way as president to vice president. So the presumption is not rebutted. That's going to be the main thing. Otherwise, all the way through, their basic points are Trump is a candidate and not an office holder, or he's in the guise of a candidate. That's not a something for which you are immune, or where your actions are cloaked with the newly minted immunity principle that the Supreme Court held in the Trump case, and that all of this is a private scheme. For example, when he tells his White House counsel to leave and gets his private counsel who's going to say whatever crap he wants, that shows this is a private scheme. That's the way it's all sort of pitched. So those are the basic arguments on the law, and they're fairly strong, other than the Pence stuff is going to be really where the battle is joined. Obviously, Smith decided he needs that evidence, or really wants that evidence, and he's ready to take on that fight, as he will. And that'll be, I think, the number one issue as the case goes up, as Smith and Chutkan hope it does, once and once only, whereas Trump is always angling for up and down, as many bites at the apple as possible before the Supreme Court, and as much delay as possible. So there you have it, the greatest hits from the brief, the legal positions that they take, and what's going to be the real epicenter of the battle that is coming up in Judge Chutkan's courtroom. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.